Well, not the news we want to start the week with. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. So if you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show, which is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. So it looks like Oregon running back Carlos Locklyn, Oregon running backs coach, I should say, is going to take the job at Ohio State right as the Ducks get set to begin spring football. As I said, not the news that we were looking to start with. And I'll be blunt with you here. I wasn't too sure about this report when it first surfaced, but Matt Zenitz of 24/7 Sports, that's a credible news reporter right there. And he's saying that Locklyn's going to take the job. And I think this brings to mind two questions. Number one, why would he go there? Number two, is he taking anybody with him? Those are legitimate questions in my mind, because for a guy like Noah Whittington, he came to Oregon with Carlos Locklyn. And remember, the NCAA two-time transfer rule got tossed out by the courts. So until we get more formal legislation, when the spring transfer portal window opens, someone could go with. And I can't rule that out. I can't say that it's likely. It doesn't feel like it would be. Whittington would be the more likely of the two between him and Jordan James. But before I even get into that more, I just wonder why Locklyn's making this particular move. Because if Oregon was still in the Pac-12 and Ohio State was in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten and SEC were showing all these same signs of pulling away from college football financially and competitively, yeah, okay, then I'd understand it because it's Ohio State. And, it's not like he's leaving for any Big Ten program, right? Demetrius Martin left the Oregon staff for Michigan State. That's his alma mater. Locklyn going to Ohio State comes as more of a surprise because there's no tie there. And with Oregon in the same conference as Ohio State, this is a lateral move. Oregon and Ohio State are the top two conference contenders, head and shoulders, not entirely head and shoulders, but pretty clear cut above everybody else going into this year. And I expect it to be that way for the foreseeable future. Oregon has shown the ability to go toe-to-toe with Ohio State recruits. Oregon's shown the ability to go toe-to-toe with Ohio State on the football field, lest we forget what happened in the Horseshoe in 2021. So, I'm sure for some fans who might feel burned by this, that game on October 12th at Autzen Stadium will have a little bit more extra meaning. But I just think that Locklyn, who just recently signed a new contract or a raise on his contract at the very least, I don't remember if he, like Junior Adams, the wide receivers coach, signed the extension as well. But I know that Locklyn got a raise after last season because he's really good. And the metrics that I use to evaluate position coaches on this Oregon staff go something like this. High school recruiting, in no particular order. High school recruiting, transfer portal recruiting, production on the field, and then development. And Locklyn gave you everything. I mean, this guy was probably the best non-coordinator on Oregon's staff. And now he's going to Ohio State. I mean, it's a great hire by Ryan Day because Locklyn is really good, as we know. And Oregon's been really good at this position for a very long time, but for the last couple of years, that success has been tied to Carlos Locklyn. And for a long time, that success was tied to Gary Campbell. And, Mario Cristobal, I don't think Campbell was on his staff, but I think this is definitely a significant loss for Oregon offensively. And I think the biggest immediate priority is make sure that nobody's transferring out of the room, or else you got to go hunt in the transfer portal come May to find a running back. So I just wonder what goes into this move for Locklyn. Like, why does he see Ohio State as a significantly better place to be than Oregon? Now, he came to Oregon from Memphis previously, or Western Kentucky, and he'd been at Memphis previously as well. So maybe he's just got closer ties back to that part of the country on the family side of things. I don't know. Maybe they're offering to pay. I know they're not going to make him an offensive coordinator. That's not part of the equation here. Chip Kelly is the offensive coordinator. Ryan Day just brought him in. So that wouldn't make a lot of sense. There's something about it. I don't think it's an indictment on Oregon. And as much as it is, there's something that I do not know personally that has made him think Ohio State's a better place for him to be. And Oregon coming into 2024 has got one of the best running back rooms in the country with Jordan James and Noah Whittington, and certainly one of the best in the Big Ten as well. And they were on track to continue having that. And now Oregon's got to go out, and Dan Lanning has to find another running backs coach. And I've not yet put together a short list, and I'm sure names will start to emerge as this week unfolds. But certainly as spring practice, is getting back underway, this is not what you want to have to deal with if you're Dan Lanning and company. And what's strange is that Locklyn has been at the first couple spring practices. It's not like he was mysteriously absent and made people scratch their heads going, where is he at? What's he doing? No, this was, he was there and he got the raise, and it was deserved because he's been so darn good for Oregon. And now he's going to Ohio State. And, Oregon fans have to put their faith in Dan Lanning here, because Lanning has made a lot of really good hires when good coaches have departed. But there's no doubt this is a little bit of a punch in the gut because of the way that Locklyn has recruited, developed, and produced. I mean, it's been at the highest level over the last couple of years. And, certainly if Whittington and James stick around, they're still going to be high-level players. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But yeah, this is a significant loss to the offensive staff. If you'd had like Mike Cavanaugh leave from his assistant offensive line coach position, or, I think Drew Maringer's done a good job with tight ends, but certainly I don't think he's as highly regarded in the scouting and NFL community as Carlos Locklyn is. That wouldn't have been as significant of a loss, but Locklyn is kind of the guy, non-coordinator, right? It's like Dan Lanning, top of the pyramid for most important, Will Stein, Tosh Lupoy, Chris Hampton, and then top of that next tier was Carlos Locklyn. So Lanning's going to have to go out and find a replacement. And then the question becomes, does he take anybody with him? Because spring football is about to unfold, and the running backs are going to be coached. We'll see kind of how all that unfolds. Maybe Lanning has known about this and he's got somebody in mind. Certainly, I'm sure he'll be asked about it at his media availability this week, and we'll wait to see what comments come out of that. But I think that for the Ducks, this is not a great way to start spring practice. It was a distraction in the room at the very least, and you just have to wonder. Whittington followed Locklyn from Western Kentucky to Oregon. Would Noah Whittington follow him to Ohio State? Probably not, right? As I think about it, I don't think that's a major concern, just because Ohio State's running back room this year is stacked. They've got Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. It's probably the best running back tandem in the country. And maybe that's what drew Locklyn there is, hey, I've got an opportunity to go coach at a premier institution. Of course, he's got that at Oregon. And I can go coach the best backfield in all of college football. Maybe that's what he's looking at. Is his ability to churn out NFL talent is, more likely to happen over there with those guys than in Jordan James and Noah Whittington. All right, I could see that particular argument, but, would a Jay Harris try and, go into the portal post-spring? Crazier things have happened. Just look at Caden Proctor at Alabama, for instance. Or would DeJuan Riggs from the 2024 class, would he flip and go over to Ohio State with Locklyn? We don't know. We don't know. Only time will tell on that sort of stuff, but certainly surprising news here. I don't think it's a death nail to Oregon's ability to win in 2024 or their staff long term, but certainly it is a blow that has been dealt. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments, or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @SMcLaughlinCFB or at LockedOnDucks. Where can Oregon least afford to have injuries? That is a good question. Here's a question for you. Have you checked out Game Time yet? Because Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on Game Time on the app actually go down the closer that it gets to first pitch. I'm a huge baseball fan myself, and if I need to get tickets in a pinch, Game Time's the place that I'd want to go. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets to Major League Baseball games. If you look at where you would want to go for a game, whether it's baseball or perhaps anything else, Game Time is going to have it for you. They've got last minute deals where you can save up to 60% buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Just go check out Game Time. You won't regret it. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, now that we got that take out of the way, let's move along to the mailbag, which is maybe my favorite part of the show. Maybe. Reaction shows are pretty fun, but the mailbag's great too. You can be a part of it, YouTube comments, or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @McLaughlinCFB or at LockedOnDucks. DMs and mentions wide open. If you want priority access and all sorts of other perks, go join the flock over at Subtext, just $5 a month after a 14-day trial. Not a requirement. Link in the description below wherever you listen to or watch this show. This from Rusty Lad 12. Ducks had a good injury record last year, but can't always rely on that in the Big Ten. What are the critical spots we cannot afford to lose injuries to avoid a drop-off in performance, not just overall depth chart? So, 3 spots came to mind for me here, but before I touch on them, I think that that's a fascinating aspect of going to the Big Ten, particularly late in the season, because as muscles and body parts are playing out in the cold and hitting into one another, yeah, I think in theory, I'm not a doctor, that can lead to maybe some more injuries here and there. I also think Oregon is pretty deep and battle tested and experienced enough to the point where we shouldn't expect, a slew of injuries. Like, oh my gosh, we went and played Wisconsin in November and 7 starters got hurt in the same game. Like, no, Oregon had injuries last year, particularly in the secondary. You had Jaleel Florence go down late in the year. You had Kyrie Jackson kind of in and out at the end of the season. There was a point in the Pac-12 title game where you had 3 corners on the field, and it was Dante Manning, Triquez Bridges, and Nico Reed. And none of those guys were expected to be among your top defensive backs on the field going into the year. But that's, of course, why depth matters. So if injuries, which are somewhat inevitable in a sport as physical as football, come about, I think there are 3 spots where Oregon can ill afford to have major injuries. Number 1, this is obvious, quarterback. Now, some might say, well, you've got Dante Moore behind, and someone sent me a video the other day of Dante Moore, with this just pinpoint, precise throw, no defense and no pads and anything like that. I'm aware of what Dante Moore can do when it's not in a game. The questions about him are what he can do in the game. And I think Dante Moore is a high-level backup quarterback because he's got starting experience and he's got immense talent, and you can't say that about a lot of backup quarterbacks in the Big Ten or really in all of college football. But going from Gabriel to Moore would be a sizable drop-off. There's not a doubt in my mind about that. And because it's the most important position on the field, it's the one where you can least afford the injury. Brian Bennett, my dream forever backup quarterback for the Ducks. So that's number 1. Number 2 is linebacker. So I like Oregon's linebacking unit a lot. There are talented guys coming in whose film I think I'm going to break down a little bit more in depth here on the show as we lead up to the spring game, which, by the way, April 27th, Autzen Stadium. Get your butt to Autzen Stadium. Sadly, I cannot, or else I would. But April 27th at Autzen, Oregon will play an organized scrimmage, which is essentially what it is. But guess what? I love it. You love it. We love it. Everybody loves it. So make sure that you are there and make an Autzen the best environment you can. But I think that Oregon's linebackers, the freshman class in 2024, are talented. I don't necessarily expect any true freshmen to play this year. But at the top of the depth chart, you've got Jeffrey Bassa, who just had his best career as a college football player and should have an even better one, frankly, this year. If you look at the growth that he's made year to year, specifically first season in this defensive system to the second year, he's also maybe the most important player on Oregon's defense because he's likely going to have a lot of the calls that come in from the defensive staff on the headset and such. And he was the play caller defensively last year. Play caller is not the right word. The guy who sent in the signals and got the defense organized and whatnot. So I think that Bassa is just a great guy to have at the top in that money spot, and then at the max spot, I might have this flip. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure Boss is the money and Justin Jacobs is the Mac. And I think that Jacobs really made an impact last year. And, when his name comes up, I try not to think about that 3rd and goal against Washington because that was his responsibility. Wasn't able to make it, but guess what? That's not everything that he's about as a football player. I think the first game he played after battling injuries through the first half of the year was Washington State, and his speed and physicality I think was really on display. And those two as your top 2 linebackers, that's a great tandem. The next guy you've got is Devin Jackson, who probably played more than was a redshirt freshman last year, going into his redshirt sophomore year. 2022 recruit and didn't play a lot that year. Played more than people probably realize a season ago, and I thought did some really nice things, but certainly it is not or has not played a starting caliber of snaps. Rotational snaps, yes, but a starter, no. And so that's a position group where, unlike in the secondary with the corners specifically, if a guy goes down, somebody else steps in who's got starting experience here or somewhere else. Jackson has got playing experience and he's got talent, but he doesn't have the starting experience yet. So you don't necessarily know, kind of like with the young defensive linemen that are going to battle out for playing time this fall or this spring and this fall as well. You have an idea of what is possible, what can happen, but you don't know what's going to happen because you don't have that proven track record yet. You've just got, talent and number of stars on paper. So, Jackson's got high-end speed, was a pretty highly rated 4-star recruit coming out of high school, and could be in for his best year yet because I think he's pretty clearly Oregon's number 3 linebacker. But the next guy on that depth chart is probably Jerry Mixon, maybe Connor Soley, but Soley really was a special teams guy a season ago. Didn't see a whole lot of action. Maybe Bryce Betcher remains in the fold. And by the way, Oregon baseball had a sweep of Seattle U in 4 games last week, which is what they should have done. And they had a comeback in the first game. Bryce Betcher is a heck of an athlete. I'm not overstating things. I don't have a large enough sample size of viewing, but Bryce Betcher might be the best defensive center fielder in all of baseball. He makes a diving catch. He throws back to first for an 8-3 double play put out to end an inning, comes up and is about 5 to 10 feet short of a grand slam in the bottom half. And Oregon, opened the floodgates. I think that was in the 2nd or 3rd game last week. The Ducks are 19-7, sitting atop the Pac-12 standings right now for the time being. But I just think that Betcher was a good story at the start because he had such an explosive spring game. He was at safety there. He moved down to linebacker. And look, he's a solid player, but if you look at the PFF grades or just kind of think about the impact plays, he's not someone, he can be a depth piece, absolutely. But is he someone who you'd like at the top of the 2 deep or close to it? Probably not. So, you look at a guy like Jerry Mixon, who was a freshman last year, and I'm pretty sure he was able to hold on to his red shirt going into this season. And he'd probably be your next most experienced linebacker with Jamal Hill out of there due to graduation. And, maybe Soley, but, Soley's kind of that safety hybrid linebacker sort of guy. And I don't think they loved what they saw from him last year. He did not record a ton of defensive snaps. So, maybe a true freshman pops in there. But I definitely say that linebacker, you've got 2 guys with legitimate starting experience. Jacobs while at Iowa and last year with Oregon, Bossa over the last several years, but there is no veteran starter behind. And then the last group here I look at is safety. I think safety, I just keep getting the sense that someone in that DB room has to make the switch from corner to safety. Do the inverse Triquez Bridges, because I don't know how you can have that many talented, productive, capable corners and have so many that could just sit on the bench and then have a safety room that, could open the door for a freshman or 2 to play. But I think that if you were to lose a Kobe Savage, for instance, you could be turning to a Tyler Turner, Cody DeCambra, who were redshirt freshmen going into this year, or an Aaron Flowers, a true freshman. If you're good enough, you're old enough. I get that. I hear that. I don't know if that's the desired outcome for Dan Lanning and company. So I think those would be the 3 positions. Everywhere else, I feel really good about Oregon's depth. You could maybe throw in the offensive line here. That'd probably be my 4th pick for position groups. But I mean, tight end, if Tiefer goes down, Herbert and Sadiq, studs. Both of them. Really high in the tight end room. Receivers, crazy depth. Running backs, absolutely. That'd probably be the fifth group, just because Jay Harris against D1 defenses. Haven't seen it yet. Haven't seen it. Doesn't mean he doesn't have potential there. So curious as to what you guys think, though. Drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments or shoot me a note over on X, formerly known as Twitter. Men's basketball had a newsy weekend. Some of it was good. Some of it not as good. You know what is good? Amazon Fire TV. You guessed it. Fire TV is your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV to provide access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, which has come and gone now, and the Mariners are 2-2. It's fine. I'll take it. Or the college basketball tournament, which is electric. We're all DJ Burns fans, right? I think so. You're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV created their own channels to deliver a constant supply of videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date with March Madness, the NBA, everything you want. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Well, it was a busy weekend of news for Oregon men's basketball, and I don't know yet what it means. I hope it's good news. Better be good news, because Oregon had their top commit in the 2024 cycle request to be released from his national letter of intent. His name is Vyctorius Miller. He was the number 51 overall player on 24/7 Sports. And in the 2024 high school recruiting cycle, Oregon now has one commitment from a 3-star, 6'8" center, Ibrahim Traore, I believe is how you pronounce his name. But I'm curious, because the portal has been Ibrahima Traore, beg your pardon. The portal has been wilding for college basketball, and Brad Underwood of Illinois, I thought, had some really targeted and accurate comments about the transfer portal. And the same principles that apply to college football are also unfortunately true in the college basketball calendar. Brad Underwood has his staff getting ready for their Elite Eight game against UConn, who I think is just going to blow everybody out of the water, is what it looks like, while they are recruiting kids and talking to kids in the transfer portal. Like, that's just no. I feel like Jamie in The Big Short, or not Jamie. Or yeah, it is Jamie. When he's talking to Charlie, and Charlie says, I think we should buy more swaps. And Jamie says, no. I don't understand why the college sports calendars are so backwards, but they are. And you shouldn't ever have to be managing your off-season moves while the season is still ongoing. There is no professional sport that does this. Not a single one. Okay? Things like a trade deadline move or a midseason free agent signing is the only thing that's comparable in Major League Baseball, and that's in a 162-game season where you're going to have attrition with injuries and you have to have so many games that those moves are essential. And that sort of stuff, it works in baseball. But in college athletics, I just don't think that it makes a lot of sense for anybody, frankly. So Vyctorius Miller decommitted, and Oregon's only got one high school recruit coming in. And so my first thought was the transfer portal. My first thought was, okay, Oregon's program has momentum with Dana Altman and company, fresh off a Pac-12 tournament title run, and then beating South Carolina in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And I'd be lying if I said I hadn't, on multiple occasions, thought about what could have been if Oregon had beaten Creighton. Tennessee's really good, but I'm watching NC State do the exact same thing. And that could have been Oregon. It wasn't. It stinks, but it absolutely could have been. I've thought about that more than a couple times. They're led by a dynamic big guy who's certainly a lot different than N'Faly Dante. That DJ Burns dude, man, that guy's a wash. Everybody loves a big fella, right? Okay, anyway, so I think that for Oregon, a big move in the portal should be coming. At least one. You're losing Jermaine Couisnard. You're losing N'Faly Dante. You're losing Cario Oquendo from this year's team. So transfers were always going to be the moot. But now that you have a pretty highly touted freshman decide, nope, I'm not going there, that makes me think perhaps I'm being overly optimistic, like with the Carlos Locklyn situation, that Oregon's got something in the bag, that Oregon has got some moves planned. And I know that Tony Stubblefield has been around the program for the last couple of weeks. He tried to be the head coach at DePaul. That's a darn near impossible job. He was at Oregon's games during the Pac-12 tournament run, might be returning to Oregon staff. He was always known as a pretty darn good recruiter for the Ducks, is my understanding. And so, everyone, and of course Dana's the most important guy, but I think that bringing him back could make sense. And when you've traveled the country like that and been around, interacted with a lot of different players, he might have a contact or two that could get you in touch with this player over there to see if he wants to come play for the Oregon Ducks, who are trying to build momentum after a round of 32 appearance. So I lean optimistic, 60-40 optimistic. There have to be portal moves. You're not going to go out and flip a bunch of high school kids. So portal moves are going to arrive. That's not an if, that's a when. And the next question is then how many? And that kid decommitting makes me think he might have seen that someone's coming in who's going to be good. So I got I'm trying to not get over my skis, but I got a little bit excited because I thought, well, that guy's really talented. That's a bummer that he won't be a developmental pick. But why does he not think that he should go play at Oregon now? I don't think it was Keyshawn Barthelemy. So that's the good news that we know for certain right now. Keyshawn Barthelemy, who played just 18 games this year, 8-point-a-game scorer off the bench, announced that barring an injury setback, he'll return to Oregon next season. That is very good news for the Ducks. Now, if Barthelemy is your starting point guard, I'm not crazy about it. Guess what? He's not going to be. He is my ideal sixth man, first guard off the bench. He can run the point a little, or he can play off the ball, and he just scores. He scores inside. He scores in the mid-range. He can shoot. He just scores. He just comes in and he scores. And for Dana Altman teams who historically have, had their ups and downs offensively, when the offense goes cold and they have one of those stretches where they don't score for 5 or 6 minutes, he's a guy that comes in and can find a good shot and can hit a shot. Now, he's not a huge guy. I don't think he's bringing a lot defensively, but that's why you have other guys who, can kind of help account for those sorts of things and shortcomings of their teammates. So, hopefully Barthelemy is able to recover. That's the one caveat is he's got to make a full recovery. But if he does, I'd love to have him back. Like I said, 8-point-a-game scorer in the 18 games he plays this year. If he were given a 2K attribute, some of you will get this reference, others might not. It would be the microwave. It would be the microwave ability where he comes in and you can say, wow, he scored 8 points in 90 seconds. That's Keyshawn Barthelemy at his best. But also can play off the ball, hits threes. Would love to have him coming off the bench. Like right now, I think you're looking at a starting five of certainly KJ Evans, Jackson Shelstad, maybe Nate Biddle. We'll see how well he's able to recover as well after an injury and sickness. You need to bring in a big or two. I mean, you've got Traore coming in. Don't know if they expect a lot out of him as a true freshman, but Mookie Cook and Jadrian Tracy, those are probably your wings, or at least two your small forwards in some order. And my thinking is Tracy starts the year as the starter, and by the end of the year, hopefully Cook develops into the starter and Tracy comes off the bench. But you need a starting two guard, and you probably need a wing and a big to come off the bench. So I think Oregon is going to make at least 2 additions from the transfer portal. I hope that number is 3, and I could see 4. I could see 4. I haven't done the scholarship math, but losing Couisnard and Dante and Oquendo, and then Jesse Zarzuela is not coming back from last year's team. That should be 4 scholarship spots that are available. So we'll see how many guys they end up bringing in. You're bringing in Traore, though. We'll see if anybody else transfers out. But this is an ongoing situation in terms of Oregon's roster development. Now is the time when you should be, making contacts and moves and everything. But, would it hurt college basketball to save this until after the national championship game? No, I really don't think so. And I think that for the Ducks, they need to make a couple of transfer portal moves, and hopefully this Vyctorius Miller decommitment means that they've got a couple of big guys coming in. I would watch for the Stojakovic kid at Stanford. He was down to kind of Oregon and the Cardinal, and he went in the portal after they moved on from Jared Haas. They, of course, hired Kyle Smith from Washington State, but Oregon was in the running for him. He could fit. He could absolutely fit. Just a name to watch out for, but certainly there will be others that pop up. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, go Ducks.